And then we're here. All right, very good. For those of you tuning in on YouTube, we are continuing with Ithaca. We're in Leopold Bloom's and Molly Bloom's kitchen. And it's deep into the questions and answers between the two. In my edition, I read the Wordsworth edition for the most part. So I'm on page 583 towards the top. And the Gabler page is 550. Give me that page again, Lois.
553.
Okay. All right. So we'll do our usual thing. We will start reading. Everybody will get a chance to read. And after all of us have read, we will go back and begin discussing. So, was the guest conscious of, and did he acknowledge these marks of hospitality? His attention was directed to them by his host jocosely, and he accepted them seriously as they drank in joco-serious silence Ep's mass product, the creature cocoa. Were there marks of hospitality which he contemplated but suppressed, reserving them for another and for himself on future occasions to complete the act begun? The reparation of the fissure of the length of the 1.5 inches in the right side of his guest's jacket, a gift of his guest to one of the 4 ladies' handkerchiefs, if and when ascertained to be in presentable condition. Who drank more quickly? Bloom, having the advantage of 10 seconds at the initiation and taking from the concave surface of a spoon along the handle of which a steady flow of heat was conducted, 3 sips to his opponents. 1, 6-2, 9-3. What cerebration accompanied his frequentative act? Concluding by inspection, but erroneously, that his silent companion was engaged in mental composition, B reflected on the pleasures derived from literature of instruction, rather than of amusement, as he himself had applied to the works of William Shakespeare more than once for the solution of difficult problems in imaginary or real life. And I pass it on to Katrina.
Had he found their solution? In spite of careful and repeated reading of certain classical passages, aided by a glossary, he had derived imperfect conviction from the text, the answers not bearing in all points. What lines concluded his first piece of original verse written by him, potential poet, at the age of 11 in 1877 on the occasion of the offering of the 3 prizes of 10 shillings, 5 shillings, and 2 shillings 6 pence, respectively, for competition by the Shamrock, a weekly newspaper. An ambition to squint at my verses in print makes me hope that for these you'll find room. If you so condescend, then please place it at the end the name of yours truly, L. Bloom. Did he find 4 separating forces between his temporary guest and him? Name, age, race, creed. What anagrams had he made on his name in youth? Leopold Bloom, El Podbomol, Moldo Globe, Bolopidom, Old Olivo MP. What acrostic upon the abbreviation of his first name had he, kinetic poet, sent to Miss Marianne Molly Tweedy on the 14th of February, 1888? Poets oft have sung in rhyme of music sweet their praise divine. Let them hymn it 9 times 9, dearer far than song or wine you are mine, the world is mine. What had prevented him from completing a topical song, music by R.J. Johnston, on the events of the past, or fixtures for the actual years, entitled If Brian Boru Could Come Back and See Old Dublin Now, commissioned by Michael Gunn, they say, of the Gaiety Theatre, 46, 47, 48, 49 South King Street, and to be introduced into the sixth scene, The Valley of Diamonds, of the second edition, 30 January 1893, of the grand annual Christmas pantomime Sinbad the Sailor, produced by Art Shelton, 26 December 1892, written by Greenleaf Whittier, scenery by George A. Jackson and Cecil Hicks, costume by Mrs. and Miss Whalen under the personal supervision of Mrs. Michael Gunn. Ballads by Jessie Noir, Harlequinade by Thomas Otto, and sung by Nellie Bouverist, principal girl. Next, please.
Firstly, oscillation between events of imperial and of local interest. The anticipated Diamond Jubilee of Queen Victoria, born 1820, exceeded 1837, and the posticipated opening of the new municipal fish market. Secondly, apprehension of opposition from extreme circles on the questions of the respective visits of their Royal Highnesses, the Duke and Duchess of York, real, and of His Majesty King Brian Boru, imaginary. Thirdly, a conflict between professional etiquette and professional emulation concerning the recent erections of the Grand Lyric Hall on Burke Quay and the Theatre Royal in Hawkins Street. Fourthly, distraction resultant from compassion for Nellie Bouverist's non-intellectual, non-political, non-topical expression of countenance and concupiscence caused by Nellie Bouverist's revelations of white articles of non-intellectual, non-political, non-topical underclothing, while she, Nellie Bouverist, was in the articles. Fifthly, the difficulties of the selection of appropriate music and humorous allusions from Everybody's Book of Jokes, 1,000 pages, and a laugh in every one. Sixthly, the rhymes homophonous and cacophonous associated with the names of the new Lord Mayor, Daniel Talon, the new High Sheriff, Thomas Pyle, and the new Solicitor General, Dunbar Plunkett Barton. What relation existed between their ages? 16 years before, in 1888, when Bloom was of Stephen's present age, Stephen was 6. 16 years after, in 1920, when Stephen would be of Bloom's present age, Bloom would be 54. In 1936, when Bloom would be 70 and Stephen 54, their ages, initially in the ratio of 16 to 0, would be as 17.5 to 13.5, the proportion increasing and the disparity diminishing according as arbitrary future years were added. For if the proportion existing in 1883 had continued immutable, conceiving that to be possible, till then, 1904, when Stephen was 22, Bloom would be 374. And in 1920, when Stephen would be 38, as Bloom was then, Bloom would be 646. While in 1952, when Stephen would have attained the maximum post-Diluvian age of 70, Bloom, being 1,190 years alive, having been born in the year 714, would have surpassed by 221 years the maximum antediluvian age, that of Methuselah, 969 years. While if Stephen would continue to live until he would attain that age in the year 3072 AD, Bloom would have been obliged to have been alive 83,300 years, having been obliged to have been born in the year 81,396 BC. Sylvia.
What events might nullify these calculations? The cessation of existence of both or either, the inauguration of a new era or calendar, the annihilation of the world, and consequent extermination of the human species. Inevitable, but unpredictable. How many previous encounters proved their pre-existing acquaintance? 2. The first in the lilac garden of Matthew Dillon's house, Medina Villa, Kimmage Road, Roundtown, in 1887, in the company of Stephen's mother. Stephen, being then of the age of 5 and reluctant to give his hand in salutation. The second in the coffee room of Breslin's Hotel on a rainy Sunday in January of 1892, in the company of Stephen's father and Stephen's grand uncle, Stephen being then 5 years older. Did Bloom accept the invitation to dinner given then by the son and afterwards seconded by the father? Very gratefully, with grateful appreciation, with sincere, appreciative gratitude, in appreciatively grateful sincerity of regret, he declined. Dave?
Did their conversation on the subject of these reminiscences reveal a third connecting link between them? Mrs. Riordan Dante, a widow of independent means, had resided in the house of Stephen's parents from 1st September 1888 to 29th December 1891, and had resided during the years 1892, 1893, and 1894 in the City Arms Hotel, owned by Elizabeth O'Dowd of 54 Precious Street, where, during parts of the years 1893 and 1894, she had been a constant informant of Bloom, who resided also in the same hotel, being at that time a clerk in the employment of Joseph Cuff of 5 Smithfield for the superintendence of sales in the adjacent Dublin Castle Market on the North Circular Road. Had he performed any special corporeal work of mercy for her? He had sometimes propelled her on warm summer evenings, an infirm widow of independent, if limited means, in her convalescent bath chair, with slow revolutions of its wheels, as far as the corner of the North Circular Road, opposite Mr. Gavin Lowe's place of business, where she had remained for a certain time, scanning through his one-lens binocular field glasses unrecognizable citizens on tramcars, roadster bicycles equipped with inflated pneumatic tires, hackney carriages, tandems, private and hired landaus, dog carts, pony traps, and brakes passing from the city to the Phoenix Park, and vice versa. Why could he then support that his vigil with greater equanimity? Because in middle youth he had often sat observing through a rondel of boss glass of a multicolored pane the spectacle offered with continual changes of the thoroughfare without, pedestrians, quadruped, velocipedes, vehicles, passing slowly, quickly, evenly, round and round and round the rim of a round and round precipitous globe. And?
Okay. What distinct different memories had each of her now 8 years deceased? The older, her bezique cards encounters, her Skye Terrier, her suspicious wealth, her lapses of responsiveness and insipid cathedral deafness. The younger, her lamp of colza oil before the statue of the Immaculate Conception, her green and maroon brushes for Charles Stuart Purnell and for Michael Davitt, her tissue papers. Were there no means still remaining to him to achieve the rejuvenation which these reminiscences divulged to a younger companion rendered the more desirable? The indoor exercises, formerly intermittently practiced, subsequently abandoned, prescribed in Eugene Sanders' Physical Strength and How to Obtain It, which designed particularly for commercial men engaged in sedentary occupations, were to be made with mental concentration in front of a mirror so as to bring into play the various families of muscles and produce successively a pleasant rigidity, a more pleasant relaxation, and the more pleasant reposition of juvenile agility. Had any special agility been his in earlier youth? Though ring weights lifting had been beyond his strength, and the full cycle graduation beyond his courage yet as high school scholar, he had excelled in his stable and protracted execution of the half-lever movement on the parallel bars in consequence of his abnormally developed abdominal muscles. Or Lois, is it? Lois.
Did either openly allude to their racial difference? Neither. What, reduced to their simplest reciprocal form, were Bloom's thoughts about Stephen's thoughts about Bloom, and about Stephen's thoughts about Bloom's thoughts about Stephen? He thought that he was a Jew, whereas he knew that he knew that he was not. What the enclosures of reticence removed were their respective parentages. Bloom, only born male, transubstantial heir of Rudolf Virag, subsequently Rudolf Bloom, of Szombathely, Vienna, Budapest, Milan, London, and Dublin, and of Ellen Higgins, second daughter of Julius Higgins, born Carolee, and Fanny Higgins, born Haggerty. Stephen, eldest surviving male consubstantial heir of Simon Daedalus of Cork and Dublin, and of Mary, daughter of Richard and Christina Goulding, born Greer. Had Bloom and Stephen been baptized, and where and by whom? Cleric or layman? Bloom, 3 times, by the Reverend Gilmore Johnston, M.A., alone in the Protestant Church of St. Nicholas without, Coombe, by James O'Connor, Philip Gilligan, and James Fitzpatrick together under a pump in the village of Swords, and by the Reverend Charles Malone, C.C., in the Church of the Three Patrons, Rathgar. Stephen, once, by the Reverend Charles Malone, C.C., alone, in the Church of the Three Patrons, Rathgar. Did they find their educational careers similar? Substituting Stephen for Bloom, Stoom would have passed successively through the Dame School and the high school. Substituting Bloom for Stephen, Bleven would have passed successively through the preparatory, junior, middle, and senior grades of the intermediate and through the matriculation, first arts, second arts, and arts degree courses of the Royal University. Why did Bloom refrain from stating that he had frequented the University of Life? Because of his fluctuating incertitude as to whether this observation had or had not been already made by him to Stephen, or by Stephen to him. Next.
What 2 temperaments did they individually represent? The scientific, the artistic. What proofs did Bloom adduce to prove that his tendency was towards applied rather than towards pure science? Certain possible inventions of which he had cogitated when reclining in a state of supine repletion to aid digestion stimulated by his appreciation of the importance of inventions now common but once revolutionary, for example, the aeronautic parachute, the reflecting telescope, the spiral corkscrew, the safety pin, the mineral water siphon, the canal lock with winch and sluice, the suction pump. Were these inventions principally intended for an improved scheme of kindergarten? Yes, rendering obsolete pop guns, elastic air bladders, games of hazard, catapults. They comprised astronomical kaleidoscopes exhibiting the 12 constellations of the zodiac from Aries to Pisces, miniature mechanical orreries, arithmetical gelatine lozenges, geometrical to correspond with zoological biscuits, globe map playing balls, historically costumed dolls. What also stimulated him in his cogitations? The financial success achieved by Ephraim Marx and Charles A. James, the former by his 1 shilling bazaar at 42 George's Street South, the latter at his 6.5 pence shop and World's Fancy Fair and waxwork exhibition at 30 Henry Street, admission 2 pence, children 1 pence, and the infinite possibilities hitherto unexploited of the modern art of advertisement, if condensed in trilateral monoidal symbols, vertical of maximum visibility, divined, horizontally of maximum legibility, deciphered, and of magnetizing efficacy to arrest involuntary attention, to interest, to convince, to decide. Jim.
Such as K11 Kino, 11 shillings, trousers, House of Keys, Alexander J. Keys. Such as not, look at this long candle, calculate where it burns out, and you receive gratis 1 pair of our special non-combo boots, guaranteed 1 candle power. Address, Barclay and Cook, 18 Talbot Street. Bacallikill insect powder, very best, boot blacking. Uni wanted, combined pocket, 2-blade penknife with corkscrew, nail file and pipe cleaner. Such as never. What is home without Plumtree's potted meat? Incomplete. With its abode of bliss, manufactured by George Plumtree, 23 Merchants Quay, Dublin, put up in 4 ounces pots and inserted by Councillor Joseph P. Nanetti, MP, Rotunda Ward, 19 Hardwick Street, under the obituary notices and anniversaries of deceases. The name on the label is Plumtree. A Plumtree is a meat pot, registered trademark. Beware of imitations. Pete Mott, Trumplee, Montpat, Plumtree. Which example did he adduce to induce Stephen to deduce that originality, though producing its own reward, does not invariably conduce to success? His own ideated and rejected project of an illuminated show cart drawn by a beast of burden, in which 2 smartly dressed girls were to be seated, engaged in typewriting. What suggested scene was then constructed by Stephen? Solitary hotel in Mountain Pass. Autumn, twilight, firelit. In dark corner, young man seated, young woman enters, restless, solitary. She sits, she goes to window, she stands, she sits, twilight, she thinks. On solitary hotel paper, she writes. She thinks, she writes, she sighs. Wheels and hoofs. She hurries out. He comes from his dark corner. He sees a solitary paper. He holds it towards fire. Twilight. He reads. Solitary. What? In sloping upright and backhand, Queen's Hotel, Queen's Hotel, Queen's What suggested scene was then reconstructed by Bloom? The Queen's Hotel Innis, County Clare, where Rudolph Bloom, Rudolph Virage, died on the evening of 27th of June 1886 at some hour unstated in consequence of an overdose of monkshod aconite, self-administered in the form of a neuralgic liniment composed of 2 parts of aconite liniment to 1 of chloroform liniment, purchased by him at 10:20 a.m. on the morning of June 27, 1886, at the Medical Hall of Francis Denety, 17 Church Street, Ennis. After having, though not in consequence of having, purchased at 3:15 p.m. on the afternoon of June 27, 1886, a new boater straw hat, extra smart, after having, though not in consequence of having, purchased at the hour and in the place aforesaid, the toxin aforesaid, at the general drapery store of James Cullen, 4 Main Street, Ennis. Did he attribute this homogeneity of information or coincidence or intuition? Coincidence. Okay, I think I'll stop there.
Wow. Hmm.
Is there a natural stop or the next paragraph?
I think we're fine. I think we're fine.
Okay, good.
Let me go back to where we were.
Geez, that's 7 pages of Wordsworth. That's a marathon. For us, that is.
Yeah, we'll wait till we see how far we get into discussion.
Nice one, Duncan.
We have read some of these pages last week. That should.
Well, that is true. That is true.
But I think it's good because even though we read some of these pages last week, I'm amazed at the number of notes that I made as we went along. So the first thing that struck my mind in today's reading was the use of the word opponent when talking about sipping cocoa. It goes, who drank more quickly?
Oh, yeah.
And then it goes down to 3 sips to his opponent's 1, 6-2, 9-3. So,
Well, I mean, it just means the person sitting opposite him.
okay.
You know, it doesn't mean they're in dispute.
Okay. All right. Meaning I hear what you say.
To place opposite. Pono means to place, and opono to place opposite. So
Okay.
it's kind of Bloom highfalutin speak.
Well, I will tell you where I went with it, and this is purely unique to my biography, which was when I was in elementary school, we would walk to school, and I would have walking contests with some of the other students. Of course, I never told them that we were having a walking contest, but I decided that I was going to outwalk somebody along the way. And so I would put my energy into getting to school faster than they were going to get to school. So in that regard, it was kind of a very bizarre form of contest. So I wondered briefly if Bloom and his solitude, which he has plenty of, if he would play this sort of little game. But I think your explanation is probably a good one, Joe.
Three, 6, 9.
The next note that I made personally was after we get Bloom's poem, it reminded me that Stephen would win money by writing essays. Trivial point, but one that came up nevertheless.
Stephen does win, doesn't he?
Stephen does win.
In portrait, doesn't he win an exhibition, or he gets?
He wins a lot of money. He wins enough money to feed his family, to treat his family for a week or two. Was the impression I got. So he won quite well.
Yeah, and they went down to the bank to collect it. And
Yeah, yeah. And he got to play the big man in the family there for a time.
Yeah, because he like the question about what are the respective areas of each of them. He's just Stephen is literary, but Bloom is described as scientific.
Mm-hmm.
Although he is described as a poet elsewhere in Ulysses, is he not, Joe?
Oh yeah, and there he is at 15 years of age. An ambition to squint at my verses in print.
Right.
Yours truly, L. Bloom.
But doesn't somebody elsewhere in the book call him a poet because of his?
There's a touch of the artist called Bloom, isn't that?
That's
the artist.
Yes, that's right. Is it Martin Cunningham who says that?
Lenhan, I think it is.
Oh, it is. Right. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's correct.
There are also some references to Bloom that writing a poem about the gull flying in the clouds or something.
Yeah, that's right. He gets a line of verse when he throws the
biscuit.
He writes 2 lines of something.
A couple times.
Yeah.
And let us not forget his reverie in the Jakes about writing something for the newspaper to earn some money from the
inspired by Matcham's Masterstroke by Philip O'Foy.
And he also contemplates writing something on say my adventures in a cabman's shelter when he's at the cabman's shelter. The character in a book in a cabman's shelter thinking of writing a book about it. It's quite See the acrostic, if you read the lines down, the first letter, you find his name, Paul D. Well, this is a very romantic.
What acrostic upon the abbreviation of his first name had he sent to Miss Marion Tweedy? Well, this helped him in his literary talents. Helped him in his wooing of Marion Molly Tweedy.
He's bursting into poetry, you see, for Marion, and it's Poldy. You see, the first letters of the poem of each line. He spells his name in acrostic. So it's that's like Chandler. Sorry, you remember in A Little Cloud in Dublin, he was too shy to read poetry to his wife. You see, this is a guy who wasn't suited to marriage. So Bloom is showing, whereas in Counterparts you have, the Arab says farewell to its horse. The uncle, the boy's uncle, comes in with a few drinks on him and he wants to recite a poem to his wife. And that's a happy marriage. So Bloom is cut out for a happy marriage. You see? Because it's a basic instinct of a man to write nonsense to his loved one,
Yeah, I think that's probably true. if one is even a little bit on the romantic side.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
I have been known to do such things myself.
Well, the drink is a terrible thing.
And I like the
Mhm.
part where he put some of life's practical problems to the works of Shakespeare.
Yes.
Yes.
At best derived imperfect solutions.
Yeah. But let me go back to the anagram and the acrostic thing again.
Yeah.
And I'm sure this is purely coincidence, but you notice that after this love poem that he wrote to Molly, that he sent it to her on the 14th of February.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, Valentine's Day.
Valentine's Day. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Valentine's Day is a thing in Ireland as well?
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Huge.
Okay. News to me.
There's a relic of St. Valentine in Whitefriar Street. Is it Whitefriar Street on Ainger Street? Whitefriar Street?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
people are meant to go in there on Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
You do the novena down there, you know.
Mm.
It's known locally as the Lost Causes Novena. Yeah.
Well, but that's because St. Judas there as well. Joe, St. Judas there too.
St.
As
Jude.
well. There's some story that they gave Ireland or that church, there's supposed to be relics there belonging to St. Valentine.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, I don't know about the Jude, but the like the sort of there's a pub across the road, fellas that watch the women coming out, you know, and they've been in there doing the novena. Yeah, she was at her last week as well. You know, apparently if you do this great novena, I don't know how long it takes to do. A few weeks, I suppose, once a week.
9.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I don't know the rules because I've no personal experience attending.
Well,
But
the other thing about St. Jude, who might also have a relic in this same church, St. Jude is the patron saint of lost causes.
Yeah.
So these women who are coming in on Valentine's Day hoping to improve their possibilities, it's a lost cause.
yeah,
There's a rhyme that you're supposed to say, but I can't remember what one of the saints are called. And it's Blessed Saint, let's say Mary, and Holy Saint John. No, I've got the Blessed Saint Mary and Holy Saint Anne. Find me a man as quick as you can.
yes, yeah. And that Whitefriars Street Church is a famous statue that it's nothing to do with Ulysses. For King Lionel of England was what was he ascended to the English throne in Dublin. He's the only king of England to have been crowned in Dublin.
Oh.
Was he a pretender to the throne, Joe?
He was very much a pretender, and it was in Norman times. It was like a Norman city, and they had no crown. The boys in Dublin, the Normans of Dublin, decided they would appoint the king in England, and they had no crown. So the statue of Our Lady that's in that church has a crown on it, and they cut the crown off and used that for the inauguration of King Lionel. And when the real king was appointed by the boys across the water, he sent for King Lionel, and he employed him as a kind of boy servant in his court.
I think Joe, he gave him the job as a kitchen boy.
Yeah, that's basically it. He worked he was on the staff, but that's connected, and that statue, there's a statue there with the crown, and people say, well, that's the actual crown, and so King Lionel is it's a great old story. But so it is kind of the Church of Lost Causes, yeah. Yeah.
Mhm. So I would like to mention that Poldy. Now, as far as we know, Molly is the only person who would refer to L. Bloom as Poldy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone
And
else.
so she must have started very early when she was like 18, it seems like, since.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I would like some help in understanding the next two paragraphs.
Right. Thank you.
You would ask, Lois.
I tried to diagram the sentence, and it's like only 4 words making up the sentence, and the rest of it is all added stuff. So, what stopped him from completing a topical song rather, that was going to be used in this particular production? And then the answer is 6 things did.
Yeah.
One is the oscillation between events. I guess things changed. And then you go through this, you go through it. The most important question for me is, what does the word articles, white articles, refer to? Is that her undergarments?
Yes.
Okay.
What we talk about articles?
Yes.
Nelly Booberist, yeah. Yeah, they're all adjectives qualifying.
Okay.
Non-intellectual, non-political, non-blah, blah.
This is all her undergarments. This is
Okay, I see.
the fourthly section.
White.
Underclothing while she was in the articles, meaning in the underwear.
Yeah, so on stage.
Yeah, right, she came out in public in her underwear.
Okay.
My understanding. So I'm going to make a wild general statement about this, particularly this whole thing. I think we can even go back to the original poem, An Ambition to Squint, and keep going through all the stuff about all the numbers of ages and all of the what would nullify and on and on.
Yeah.
This is hypnosis. This is Joyce attempting, and I would say successfully attempting regarding careful readers, to put us in a fugue state.
Yeah.
That is so convoluted, and to give us the feeling of being awake at what, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning after a long day.
Yeah.
Because the mind just, I mean, at least my mind, as we get into all these calculations and all this stuff, my mind just becomes kind of real floating above in this state of middle of the night.
Yeah. But it's very straightforward at the same time, but he does inflate it with lots and lots of calculations. But the idea behind it is very straightforward. Like if you're, I'm thinking in my own case, which this registers with me because when I was born, my nearest sister was 6 years of age. So I had 3 sisters, and she was 6 times my age. By the time I was 5, that didn't matter so much, By the time I was 20, it doesn't matter at all. It's true of us all. And
Yes.
like when we're born, our parents are older than us. But by the time you reach 70, you're the same age as your parents were, perhaps, or they were 1.11 times yours at this stage. But he said, if that doesn't happen, if that proportion somehow, if it was permitted to, then these fantastic situations would arise, which really lead us nowhere.
Right. That's what I say. It's calculations to,
Yeah, it's calculation for calculation's sake.
If we're in the Methuselah paragraph, My notes, I assume from Gifford, say that some of his calculations are actually incorrect.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like he's mathematically wrong. The ratio of the initial ratio of 16 to 0 is wrong.
That's what
Um,
school says too.
It's 6 to 1. You cannot have a ratio with zero. You divide one into the other, or you can't divide by zero.
Correct.
But,
Well, it's been a long day.
yeah, but
That's right, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
It's gas. It's a good try, isn't it? It's-
Okay, trivial question. Why unpredictable?
Where is the unpredictable?
That's
That's
like
on
slide
586. 586, it says new, let's see, reading from the top, new era calendar, the annihilation. These are reasons why,
Oh yeah,
mathematical thing would be aborted.
yeah,
Annihilation of the world, consequent extermination of the human species, inevitable but unpredictable.
yeah. We can't say when.
But why not unpredictable?
Yeah, that's the same. Yeah, same
But where
idea.
did he come up with this word? How does does he make up unpredictable?
Don't know.
I've never heard of unpredictable before, which is why I asked the question.
Yeah.
Ah, right. Let's see if Sloat says anything. Nothing. I don't.
What number?
A dictionary. I got a dictionary.
What
Just-
line? What line number is it?
Are you in Gabler?
Yeah.
Give us the
Okay.
Gabler line number.
So it's about 465, 466.
All right.
Okay, so the Sloat does not say anything about
No, he doesn't.
unpredictable.
It's not. It's not in the Oxford English Dictionary.
Okay, so it's a uniquely created word.
What's the word? What's the name for that? There's a word to describe
Neologism.
neologism.
Uh,
The neologism.
there's another one too in this that struck me post.
yes, instead of anticipating, it's
Uh,
posticipating.
Posticipating.
Yeah.
The idea of a new calendar. There's an idea now. If anyone wants to write to the current incumbent of the White House and say
Mhm.
he should start at year one. You know,
There you go.
year one.
Didn't somebody else have that idea as well? Someone like Pol Pot or someone.
Oh, every nutcase in history, starts it. But
Yeah, that is how they do it in Japan. And for their traditional, they have
yeah,
two systems going at the same time. They use our system, and
yeah,
then when there's a new emperor, then
Mm.
they say Taisho one, or
yeah,
they renamed the time things
Mhm.
somehow connected with the new emperor.
yeah. That's the way the Romans did it as well. Like the New Testament begins in the during the reign of Tiberius. But and we've done that to the assumed date of birth of Jesus Christ. We work on that as year.
Yes, we took the Roman system, right?
Yeah,
Is
but
what I assume.
no, they just said in the reign of this emperor that you named the emperor, but we just said year one was 30 was 5 BC was year one or whatever it is, but we just said we call that one, and the Mohammedans did the same. Then later, but it's the stuff of Altarianism, isn't it? It's totally ridiculous.
everything.
Well, yeah, the church is authoritarian. It's not a democracy.
Oh, no, it's theocracy.
Yeah.
But according to Vico, we start with a theocracy. And then it's, and I'm missing one. It's a theocracy, it's an aristocracy, it's a democracy,
You talk about
and then
Vico?
it's chaos.
And that's
And
why
then
when
it starts again.
all these people say that Israel is a democracy, they're completely wrong. It's a theocracy.
Hmm.
So it's a backward step from the scale of things that Orla is talking about.
Yeah, well, there's a big conflict there because actually, in the beginning of the new nation of Israel, it was a bunch of socialists who were very non-theocratic.
Oh,
And it is only over time that the religious nuts, if you will, have taken over. And the original secular socialists have been kind of pushed aside.
that's the problem with theocracies, they're terrible places. Ireland was a theocracy, really, in Joyce's
Hmm.
time. And you learn how to live with it.
Yeah.
Speak quietly into your friend zone.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, but now we get, if I may, we get the year that Poldy met Molly, and you see the first in the lilac garden of Matthew Dillon's house in 1887. So
Mm-hmm.
by Valentine's Day 1888, let's say they're
Studying poetry.
about 6 months into the relationship. The max a year sort of thing, but say 10 months. So that it's a well-developed relationship in that time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to go way out, but we have the thing. Did Bloom accept the invitation to dinner given them by the son and afterwards seconded by the father?
So funny.
Very gratefully, with grateful appreciation, with sincere appreciative gratitude and appreciatively grateful sincerity of regret, he declined.
Yeah.
So, being a speculatively inclined kind of person, I would wonder if he declined because he had a date with Molly.
That's interesting.
But of course, that's, I'm sure, an unanswerable question. Because I'm sure a dinner invitation for Leopold Bloom was a big deal.
Yeah, but from a 5-year-old, it would be unusual.
It's true.
Bolt invited me to dinner. I might graciously decline rather than put the father on the spot,
Right.
having to dinner. So could be courtesy.
It could also, okay, but in addition to that, of course, the reason why he declined, etc., but it could also be a reason, among the reasons why he is attracted to Stephen at this time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because he remembers how cute the little fellow was when he spontaneously invited him to stay for dinner.
Yeah.
Which to an alienated soul, such as Leopold, would be a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Particularly coming from a child who has a reputation of always being innocent.
5 years older now, Duncan.
Yeah. The first time he wouldn't shake his hand.
Yeah, he's 5. The second time he's 10.
Yeah.
Because he's
Okay.
born in 1882 and this is 1892. I just looked to see when did Leopold and Marion get married, and it says October 8th, 1888.
There you go. It's consistent.
Huh. 1888.
88.
So that's the marriage of the two.
And that hotel, Breslin's Hotel, is
In Bray.
in Bray at the other end of the promenade from the house, the Joyce house in Martello Terrace. And it's which is obviously the setting for Stephen at 10 years of age as well. Yeah, it ties in. And that's the hotel where he watched with Eileen, what's her name?
Oh,
Eileen
yes.
watched the man pulling the flag up on the flagpole in portrait.
Right. Huh.
So it's intricate, isn't it?
Yeah. So, and what was the date of the wedding?
The 8th of October, 1888.
Thank you.
Now, obviously, I just have to tick. Yep, there's 2 different people saying it. So in 1892, what was he doing there? 5 years later.
Yeah. Interesting.
Married for 3 years.
Mm.
Well, maybe he just wanted to go home for dinner.
Okay, so
And Millie is born in 1889 and Rudolph 1893.
resided in Stephen's parents from September 1888.
Mhm.
Okay, and then she was living in the hotel 92, 93, 94. So Poldy and Molly were already married,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so they must have both been living in the hotel, City Arms Hotel, right?
Yeah. Which would make great sense if he was working in the cattle market as a
Mhm.
whatever they call it, auditor. I don't know what nature of work he would have been doing, the cattle market, but there he managed Joseph Cuff there of 5 Smithfields.
Mhm.
Yeah, like that'd be a short walk to work in the morning.
He was a clerk in the employment for the superintendents of sales.
Yeah, at the adjacent. He says here adjacent. It is actually. Yeah, when I say a short walk, it really is short.
Mm-hmm.
I think the double cattle market's gone, isn't it? Anyway.
Extreme.
Cattle Market, the North Circular Road. And remember, there was a book club back when we did Flann O'Brien and there was all the cowboy stuff.
Yeah.
I can't remember which book it was. And he was very influenced by Joyce as well, by that sort of, what would you call it? I suppose the cowboy carry on that the Irish took on, herding cattle as if they were cowboys. I've gone totally off on a tangent. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, it closed in 1973.
The cattle market closed.
Dublin Cattle Market, yeah.
Oh, that's pretty
Well, the
recent.
City Arms Hotel is still there. It's got a different name. And that's where all the cattle that run through Joyce, when they were sold, they were then, most of them were bought for factories in England, and they were driven through the streets of Dublin, down Wall Street and down along the quays. I remember them. I'm quite a frightening experience to see them because the poor creatures were terrified. I mean, they'd never been in a city, and they were
Right.
and that's why. And they would go on the B&I boat. That's why. The boat that what's her name, Evelyn and Frank are going on was called the cattle boat.
Mhm.
Passengers were on deck, ferry across to England. Passengers on deck, cattle below. And it was a sign of poverty to travel on the cattle boat.
To travel on the cattle boat.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was.
well, I mean, if uh, uh, cattle are quite odoriferous when they're gathered together in a concentrated form.
Oh,
There are parts of Texas which I dread driving through because they have the feedlots
oh no.
that go on for like 20 miles. So they have these thousands and thousands of cattle all concentrated, and it is just horrific. It is so smelly, and it's a ammonia type smell. So there's no escaping it. It like penetrates right through you. It's like, drive faster. We need to get out of here.
Yeah, but that's what it was like, traveling through Dublin sometimes. Uh, when we were crossing town to visit my grandmother, and if it was cattle day, it was terrible. And that's why Bloom wants to run a railway line down to the docks. It's
Mhm.
Right.
this capital project.
Yep.
Detail is phenomenal.
And then we have this very interesting, bizarre thing about Bloom being his humane self, taking Mrs. Riordan out, pushing her uh, basically wheelchair. Okay.
With her one leg,
Yeah, a one lens binocular. Is that an oxymoron?
don't know.
One lensed.
Yeah.
That could mean several things. It could mean actually that one of the binoculars had the lens knocked out.
Uh-huh.
Or it could be a weird way to refer to a telescope.
Yeah.
But I think both Bloom and Mrs. Riordan are probably educated enough that they would know the word for telescope. So it's probably just an old pair of binoculars
Yeah.
that was missing a lens.
Yeah.
I keep going over this. Why could he then support that his vigil with the greater equanimity?
This is a great one. This is a really great one.
Okay.
It is so bizarrely detailed. Well, it's basically how could he put up with being with Mrs. Riordan while she's sitting there looking through this damn pair of binoculars, enjoying people walking by.
Well, also the syntax of the sentence doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that's what I'm.
The word that. Why is the word that in there?
Oh, why could he then support that his
That
vigil?
his vigil
Yeah, that's true.
Support the idea that his vigil.
No, it still doesn't make sense. Why could
he then support
that his vigil with greater equanimity?
Yeah.
And support that his vigil. Oh.
If there was a you can't. It's
wrong. Comma his vigil comma.
Why could he then support that his vigil?
That his vigil comma.
All right, maybe.
I think it's a fancy way of asking how could he put up with standing by Mrs. Riordan when she was taking her time looking for binoculars at people in the distance.
Yeah. And it's interesting because Molly will tell us later that she left us nothing in the will.
Yeah.
Yes,
Huh?
he was hoping to cash in. Is that not correct? And then she left it to the church or something?
Yeah, and you see up above in the previous one, propelling her warm summer evenings, an infirm widow, independent,
And it
with
means.
a limited means.
And
Yes.
independent but limited means. Yeah,
Yeah.
limited
Yeah,
enough that she didn't
because
regret it.
her husband went away with all the money, didn't he?
Don't know.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
We're gonna check
I
something.
thought it was the church, in fact.
Yes, I thought it was the church that got the money.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it
No,
might
but
be
Well, I think
that.
Ian is
why
making
she's
a different
limited
point.
is because she lost, the husband took some of the money. Didn't she come out of the nuns because her brother died and then she was entitled to the money? And then she married somebody
Oh,
who
Oh,
took,
wow.
Yes,
Okay.
he
yes.
took the
Wow.
money, and so that's why she was on limited means.
Yeah.
She would have been very
She
wealthy.
inherited money from her family
She was a nun.
Yeah.
and she inherited enough money that her husband, maybe that's the reason he married her, who knows?
Oh, I would, yeah, what I remember that story.
And after a time,
He went
he
off to America or someplace
took the money and
and
went.
left her high and dry.
Penniless or without
Was that when she went to live with the
She was related to them
Douglases?
somewhere, wasn't she? She was related to the Joyces.
Yeah, she lived with them.
Oh, there
Yeah,
was
but she was a relation to one of either the mother or the father.
Let me look it up. I can't remember.
I can't remember either, but that's a bit.
But it's
Google.
Molly has a different angle on it because he doesn't tell us, and presumably he not thinking it that he was hoping to make a few bob,
Mm.
but she has the you know.
Maybe she's Molly's bearing
Yeah,
false witness against her innocent husband.
exactly. Yeah. This is Dante. Do you remember
Yeah,
Dante?
that's Dante, Mrs.
Yeah.
Riordan.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
Yeah, Mrs. Reardon, widow of independent means, had resided in the house of Stephen's parents. And the real woman has a different name, Elizabeth Hearn. She entered a convent with the intention of becoming a nun and taught in the Convent of Mercy in Western Pennsylvania. Before taking her final vow to quit the convent when her brother died in 1862, leaving her the sum of £30,000. That's huge money.
So she was a nun in America?
She hadn't taken her vows,
Okay.
right? But she was in the Convent of Mercy as a trainee nun, I presume. You know, you have to
In
nine.
Pennsylvania.
Returned to Ireland, settled in Dublin, where she married a Mr. Conway, son of a solicitor. He was a clerk and blah blah blah. After a couple of years' marriage, he absconded to Buenos Aires.
okay. I knew he went somewhere. Argentina. Wrong one. South America.
Close. With most of his wife's fortune, she became an abandoned wife and was embittered as a result.
As one would.
And she joined the Joyce family as a governess to the children in 1888.
Okay.
When Martello Terrace in Bray. So that's all, yeah. And it goes on to give a little bit more about their changing houses. I never knew that was Dante. It's
Okay.
super.
I don't know how I knew it.
Yeah, this stuff floats around.
And you always have a great memory for detail.
Yes.
I don't know.
Maybe I like the story.
I envy you.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah,
recall
and didn't
stuff.
Stephen's father at the famous dinner, didn't he really insult her?
Oh, yeah.
You know,
She
an
incredibly
embittered little
angry.
bitch, like.
Yes. She was, there was a knockdown drag out, as they say.
Yeah. I bring my library crew down there once a year to that house, and we read that episode in the room, which
I'd love that.
Liz, what's Liz's name? Liz McManus, the name Irish people might remember. Former Minister of Labour, Elizabeth McManus. That's her house now.
Mhm.
She's a big Joycean fan, and she lets me in and gives us the run of the room, and it comes alive in the room because the detail of the father warming his backside against the fire and the fireplace.
Mhm.
You can see where this comment about the window, and we can tell where the pictures would have been on the wall
Yeah.
and all, because of the text, and they love it now. Liz has stopped doing that. She used to do it. There's an Irish government scheme. If you open your house so many days a year for historical purposes, you get a tax maintenance, and there's a lot of maintenance on that house because it has to be kept exactly the same. And but 2 years ago she stopped. She came off the scheme and just said she'd let her friends in. So, but it's a great old outing for sort of.
We had a member of the group for a while, that woman who was a flight attendant, who went out there.
Oh
and
yeah,
did-
Susan.
Yeah, that was really fun.
Mhm.
I brought a few people down there, just people, I say it to people in Swinny's. Where are you going down to Bray? And they'd say, yeah, I'll go with you. And when Liz would say, he would get into the house, you see. And if I liked them, I just on the train, I have free travel on the train.
I can't wait.
And but it's interesting that room is still there, and you can, and that row is dreadful.
Oh, I love to read that. I really like to read that and divide up the parts, and it's a very dramatic reading, and lots of fun.
You can feel the tension building up.
Yeah.
Is that in the Dade?
No, portrait. That's a Christmas dinner in portrait.
And my Christmas
Oh, yes. I remember. Yes.
dinner row.
Yeah, they had the Charles Parnell argument. Or
That's right. Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you behave yourself, she brings you up to the house, and you can. It's an old-fashioned house, and the what I would call the living room is on the first floor. It's up one stairs, and you get this beautiful view of Bray, and you realize the first bandstand in Bray was a Martello Tower. That Joyce, as a kid, was looking at a Martello Tower from the day he moved into that house. And what's her name next door? Eileen Vance. Her father was a pharmacist.
Yeah.
Well, pharmacy and Martello Tower percolate Joyce's writing in Ulysses.
Yeah. Okay.
So
we're not going to have enough time to go into the answer, what supported his vigil, but I think this answer is fantastic. So we should probably bring that up when we get together next week. At least I think it's fantastic. It's very hard to understand without really slowing down.
Okay.
Okay, so what's the first sentence next week, and I'll mark it.
I think we should go with why could he then support? Because we do want to talk about this answer, because in middle youth he had often sat observing through a rondel of boss glass, blah 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 blah. So that's my
Perfect.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Right.
Just my usual Thursday plug for Shakespeare tomorrow. Sylvia, we can give you a good part if you come.
I won't be here next week, but I will be the following week. Not for Shakespeare, for Joyce.
Okay.
For
So-
Joyce. Okay. Yeah.
I'll
Excellent.
probably be there tomorrow. I don't know exactly, but I'll try.
Perfect.
Okay. Okay.
That's great.
Well, you know,
Okay. Take care,
so,
everybody.
you're
Goodbye.
talking to
Thank
us,
you.
you have to turn on your
Bye.
microphone.
Good night,
Thank
everybody.
you. Thank
Goodbye.
you.
All right. Thanks, everyone.